Hello there. Welcome to episode 3 of Ilex Syllable's Wheel of Books. And on this particular episode, the episode is The Project. So, welcome to that. I am going to chat about my experience rereading Marge Piercy's Woman on the Edge of Time. And yeah, so make yourself a cup of tea or throw this on while you're doing the dishes. I don't know. I don't care. If you at any point are listening to me, you haven't read the book and you want to read the book, pause and go and do that. I'd really highly encourage anyone who thinks it's a cool concept as I'm describing it to go and read it. I will be getting into spoilers. I'm going to be discussing the book in quite a lot of detail. What I will do is I'm not going to reference the 2 or 3 moments that really made me go, real plot twisty things. I think that's fair enough. I'm going to talk about the general gist, some elements that I liked, but I will leave some things for a new reader to uncover, even if they listen to the full podcast. I don't know if this is a podcast. Would you call it that? Video? Essay? Who knows? Okay, so what are we talking about? This is a science fiction written by Marge Piercy, who is a notable activist, feminist writer who has had a part in quite a lot of political movements throughout her life, and really shows in this work. It's funny, she's 90 years old and is still actively running a blog on her website, which is just so admirable and cool. And I devoured this book. I read it in, I'd say, 2 or 3 days. I just kept coming back to it. The conceit of the novel is that there is a woman who has a very tough time and gets put into a psychiatric institution. That sort of all happens within the first chapter. She is in a situation whereby she has been committed beforehand, and some actors within her life wrong people around her, and then because of the power implicit in the fact that they're male, they haven't been committed before, they probably have a little bit more money than she has, they leverage that power and have her committed. That's the first chapter. It's interesting because the second chapter takes that period of time and then goes back maybe about a half an hour or half a day and shows that event, those set of events again, with the additional context of, on this day, when these terrible things happen, she is also being, I suppose, visited by someone from the future, someone who purports to be from the future. And there's clues even from the start that this is a real thing that's happening. Her niece, for example, comes over to her apartment, sits down on the chair where this person has been sitting, and mentions that the chair is warm. I could hear voices. Is there someone in here with you? So from the start, we don't think that this is a psychiatric moment or any sort of psychosis. We take this person at their word, and she quite quickly takes this person at their word, and that's never kind of a thing in question. So it's important to note from the start that a lot of the narrative is built around the concept of class inequality, gender inequality, and racial inequality. So that is very much built into how our main character, whose name I'm going to look up because I didn't do it beforehand, Consuela. So she's Consuela, but self-refers to herself as Connie throughout the book. A lot of what happens and a lot of her insight and the things that she's previously experienced, which now she draws her experience into her current events, are very much notably overtly framed against this intersectional inequality within society. So Consuela is Chicana. She is of Mexican descent living in America. And she has previously had her child taken from her. Part of the mechanics behind that is that her previous husband sort of didn't quite disappear, but left and refused to sign divorce papers. And then she had a very meaningful relationship with a partner who was blind and a pickpocket, and she loses him because he is brought in for medical experimentation, basically, and that's a big theme of this novel as well, whereby she loses him. I don't know if it is directly is it Tuscany trials where they injected syphilis into black men. It's either that or analogous of it. Sorry, I said Tuscany and I knew I was making that up in my head. It's Tuskegee or Tuskegee. I'm not sure how you'd pronounce it, but that is a real thing that happened, where 600 black Americans were given syphilis as just to trial it, and they weren't treated. I think that they were brought in not treated, and they were sort of just awful medical experimentation, and again just treating people within society as other power imbalances that sort of end things. But that's how she lost her husband. Was obviously having a terrible time, had substance abuse issues, neglected her daughter, and her daughter was taken from her. So that's when she was initially put under psychiatric hold. And then obviously a large portion of this novel then talks about how people are treated within those spheres, and the lack of autonomy therein. Now, what I will say, and I thought this was just such an interesting thing that I don't think I caught the first time, is in the foreword, Marge thanks a number of people in relation to like sharing their experiences, but there's also a line, I'll find it for you here. Okay. Above all, I am grateful to people I cannot thank by name who risked their jobs to sneak me into places I wanted to enter, and grateful to the past and present inmates of mental institutions who shared their experiences with me outside and inside. So she went to facilities and spoke to people, and seemingly without permission from sort of maybe the people running those institutions, which is really interesting. I mean, I think that's right on Marge, So that's the base setting, and throughout this novel, and I will describe like kind of what happens from here because I think it is really interesting. But we keep returning to this institutionalization. So I mentioned that there was a man who had been showing up in Connie's life, or had shown up that day. So it transpires that within this world, Connie is what's called a catcher. And what that basically means is that she is receptive to psychic. Never really gets into it. It's probably like quite a loose system of explaining why she's able to receive sort of psychic influence, but she is. And this visitor from the future is I don't know how they describe him, a thrower, or he basically is able to reach out to her. She's able to receive him. And initially he visits her, but then very quickly she starts visiting him in their almost utopian. It's not utopian, sorry. Utopia describes something that is quite built up. This is sort of a, not steampunk, there is a word for it. Hope punk? It's solar punk. The word I'm looking for is solar punk. It was the first, I've seen someone say that it was the first iteration of solar punk within the canon. Basically means that there is some technology, but not a huge amount of it. Mostly we're focused on farming and community, and keeping things very intentionally simple. and beneficial, working with the environment to create a life that is very low impact. Now, in this case, there's still things like traveling. There is some technology, but it isn't really what impacts the day to day sort of thing. So, this society in the future is one where a lot of these factors that would cause division, that really inform Consuela's worldview, her experiences, and really define, in some ways, in some viewpoints, define the way we live right now, are not an issue, or not, they've been societally deprioritized. And things I mean there are gender, class, and race. So race is an interesting one. These are all kind of drip fed out through the novel. Worth saying, actually, if I haven't mentioned it all already, now is a good time to switch out. If you are listening to this and think, oh, this is all interesting, I would like to experience this firsthand myself, I've sort of described, I'm going to get into some more of the particulars now. So this information is all sort of drip fed bit by bit to build up Consuela's understanding of the society. But in terms of race, they to preserve the culture that they have come from. This is like 150 years or so in the future, possibly a little bit more. But they will have tribes that honor the cultural roots without having any racial connections. So, for example, there might be a town that's Harlem. There might be a town that is, Hawaii, or, just different locations within the US, but I think maybe probably a bit further as well. And that's how they preserve culture, but they don't have a society, this is where gender collapses, is they don't have a society that gives birth. I think babies are like grown. It's a little bit Brave New World-ish. There's a couple of moments where I'm like, this feels a bit Brave New World, but it lands in a very different way than Brave New World. It doesn't have the same societal kind of, what am I trying to say? You take a pill and you're nearly like our version of scrolling on your phone. That to me is very Brave New World. But doesn't have that. Everybody's living a much more wholesome, grounded life. But no, there's no birth. There is, the babies are grown. They are basically, if someone dies within the village, they start a new baby, I think is kind of how it works. But the genetics of those babies are kind of mixed, and some people will be different races, but I don't think it's like an inherited trait. But where gender really falls out there is that when babies are born, 3 members of the community will come together and elect to be the mothers of that child for the first, I think, like 11 years of their life. And they can be male or female. And there's a very pivotal scene where Connie sees one of the men that she's been interacting with, who is now a mother, start to breastfeed the child. So he's taking kind of hormones, I think is the way that works. And really these things, and maybe some travel capabilities, are the only technologies. Some like holographic cinema type of art that they use as well, but everything else is like bicycles, farming. It's all very low tech apart from these things. So the motherhood is taken out of it. Now, it's a very interesting moment because Connie, as a mother who has like effectively lost her child is alive, but not in Connie's life anymore, she hates this. She is so against this. She feels like the future of what is special about being a woman is lost, and she is very much grieving of it. I'm just going to get a page from the book that I thought was very interesting that kind of explains this. So it was page 105. Okay, so This is someone from the community explaining. And actually, before I read this, it's worth mentioning that this is one of my favourite things that novels do. I don't know if it does it in this paragraph, but the language that these people use is recognisable but different. They have different speech patterns. It's something that I love in Clockwork Orange. They do it really well in, what's that one? Cloud Atlas does it really well, where every era that they cover has different speech patterns. So this is just in case it comes up, which it might do in this paragraph. So, it was part of woman's long revolution, when we were breaking all the old hierarchies. Finally, there was that one thing we had to give up to, the only power we ever had, in return for no power for anyone. The original production, the power to give birth. Because as long as we were biologically enchained, we'd never be equal, and males would never be humanized to be loving and tender. So we all became mothers. Every child has 3 to break the nuclear bonding. Now, some people might not agree with that. I'm not saying that's like the utopian future that we're all aiming towards, but I think it does speak to this idea that to really break the barrier of change, of true societal, cultural change, of stepping away from this world that is so entrenched in suffering, you do have to lose some things. You know, you can't have next day delivery Amazon and clean rivers. You can't have Amazon and Amazon, right? So I thought that was an interesting way of exploring that. Now, where I love this thread is that about 20 pages later, and Consuela's still going through this, like everything else she's been like, okay, kind of weird, but okay, like even people being androgynous was a bit strange to her. People in the future, in this particular future, are very loose in terms of their sort of sexual arrangements with each other. There's a lot of, like, they're basically kind of polyamorous, but just on their own terms, depending on who they're attracted to. These are things that she kind of accepts to a certain extent, but struggles to get there. You know, think of your favorite, like, auntie who gets it, but is also like, it wasn't like that in my day. It's a bit like that, but she's like, really, this motherhood thing is tripping her out. But about 20 pages later, she sees a child who, they never clarify why this is, but the child is the image of her child. She thinks in this moment that's her child. And it shocks her so much that it just sends her straight back to the psychiatric ward. This is one of the mechanics of this novel, is that she's not really in the future. She's in the ward. She's just experiencing. She can kind of eat, but it doesn't sustain her, that kind of thing. So she has the shock, wakes back up in the ward, and immediately she is like, if that weird mothering thing is the thing that it takes for my child to have a life that doesn't involve the things I've had to deal with, immediately accepts it. It's magic. It's just so powerful. I love it as a function within that novel, that there's not even a moment. She's really not really against it. She's like, doesn't get it, sees her child there. Okay, you can have that. Men can breastfeed the kids all day. I do not care. So that's a really really gorgeous moment, and I think really just very powerful. So other things that I noted down, in terms of the structure of this society, and these kind of more things that, like, maybe just the world building felt very lovely to me. So when the kids are 11, they go off, they, I think, have a week off in the wilderness. They come back and they have a new name. Sometimes these people have new names, and that's part of their kind of culture. And when they return, there's a period of time where their mothers can't speak to them. So they come back and integrate themselves now as adults within, young adults, but they're adults once they're at that age. They can, work and interact with the life that everybody is leading, but their mothers can't speak to them for a certain amount of time, and it's to kind of remove that attachment. that they're not like kind of relying on them. It's just an interesting little point. They have a very robust conflict resolution system, which includes violence. It's very much they help where they can. There's a kind of a level of, there's no property as such. If someone's really doing something they really shouldn't be doing, they can be ostracized for a period of time or completely ostracized. If they're violent towards someone the first time, there's an element of rehabilitation. The second time, they kill them. So it's kind of like do no harm, take no shit sort of vibes. War is still an element that's interesting. It never really fully comes to a head, but there's still part of it's like, I think it's that the polar ice caps and space or something is still occupied by, like, I don't know, cyborgs and robots, and basically the future version of hypercapitalism that they've sort of stepped away from, and they send waves of drones to kind of kill them. And so there's still like a war front and people go and serve the war. They are very much they go kind of have a calling, but I think you can change your job. You just sort of train in, and like even the kids are schooled sort of amongst the community. So like you'll have a kid with you when you're planting tomatoes, and you're like, this is how you plant a tomato, and this is how you know XYZ. So this is how the cultural, everybody's kind of working as a cog in the machine to make this work. They have a nice element of, they do have single use things. So the way they do it is that anything that's like beautiful, meant to last, is kind of put out on loan around the world. So at one stage, one of the people mentions that they had like a Michelangelo in their home for 6 months, and then goes on to someone else. Anything that's made is made to last, but they also have, for ceremonial occasions or like holidays or whatever, you can kind of 3D print out of natural materials like a one-off dress, and it'll just break down afterwards, which I thought was fantastic. There's a line in it where someone, I think Consuela asks someone like, well, what do you do when you want to throw something away? And they say, well, throw it away where? The world is round. I'm like, oh, love it. Absolutely love it. There is a whole thing with the government whereby you're kind of brought in on a temporary basis. You train in the person that comes after you, and you learn from the person before you, and you're only in it for a certain amount of time. There's actually this great line that I love. It's like, I call it the litany for delegation, but it's just what they say to themselves about this handing over the government. So it's 252. Oh, sorry, yeah, this is just something else that popped up there. Once you have done that big job for the year or whatever, then you go off and do something really unimportant. You do like sheep herding or something that basically someone would do if they've done a crime. Like you go and do something that's basically to kind of keep you level. And every 7 years, no matter what you're doing, every 7 years you get a year off to study, to go traveling, whatever it is, which I'm just like, can we all just do that? That sounds great. So when you're taking on a coordinating job, you say this pledge: the need exists, I serve the need. After me, the need will exist, and the need will be served. Let me do well what has and will be done as well by others. Let me take on the role and then let it go. Like, I don't know if that's just me. I love that. I'm like, yes, it's just, you can delegate stuff. Just don't work yourself to death on things. I love it. Anyway, there's also an interesting moment whereby, because of her exposure to how sort of free and loose the future is, there's a moment where Connie is talking about her caseworker from the past, from like the real world. And at the start she had been very standoffish about her, didn't really like her, And then by the end of it, she's like, I'm probably a bit queer for that woman. Like, fantastic. So there is a whole thing going on in the like normal time, now time, whereby there's a doctor that comes in and starts doing experiments, medical experiments on the patients. And Consuela's attempt to escape becomes a catalyst for whether or not that future ends up existing. And it's phenomenal. And I kind of don't want to get into the mechanics of that. I think that's like the last third of the novel is like where it just really turns into a what happens next? Oh my god, what's gonna happen? I think it's just so well done. So that is where I'm going to leave it. That's where I'm going to leave it. I found it surprising. One thing I will say, because I found this out from the Wikipedia page, I didn't do too much research on it, but I don't want to let it pass without kind of mentioning it myself, is that Marge Piercy seems to have just spent this life being so phenomenally involved in the progression of society in a good direction in a way that I admire so much. There is a moment on her Wikipedia page that notes that she signed a... I'm going to pull up the wording because I don't want to get it wrong. So she signed an open letter described as an open statement from 48 radical feminists from 7 countries. This is Wikipedia's wording of this. The letter may be interpreted to endorse TERF ideology because it defends the right to exclude transgender women from women-only conferences. In 2024, however, she wrote in her blog explicitly supporting trans people. This is a quote from her. I can't understand the anger of trans people and LGBTQ, etc. in general. Why shouldn't someone decide they've been assigned the wrong gender? What business is it of governments? So the reason that I mention that is that I found that surprising because of how gender progressive I felt that this novel was. Looking back, I don't think that there's any transness in it. I think that it's that the gender has been de-escalated in male bodies and female bodies, but not sort of played with. So that's fine. Look, she is 90 years old, and I don't think that you can be a public figure in the realm of what she does without at some stage saying something that rubs people up the wrong way or that feels later to be slightly off key. I'm not defending that. I mean, all I can say is I can only talk about it from my personal point of view. Okay, I'm not someone who is, particularly active in any activist spheres, and I would love to be more, but I'm not, and I'm not going to sit here and be an expert on anything. I think if I was in a space that was actively excluding of trans people, I would not feel as comfortable in that space. That doesn't align with what I would want, and it doesn't, I don't want to defend it. I can kind of see, especially in the earlier years of this sort of discourse, where people might want to draw that line in the sand. But what I would be more coming from is, what is it about a woman's only conference that is so crucial to your experience? Right? So, yeah, I don't know. That's my very underbaked take on the whole thing. She's, from the very little research that I did, she is phenomenal. Her work is phenomenal. I absolutely loved this work. But I just was shocked when I read it, because I wouldn't have even, maybe I would have mentioned it, but I found it surprising because I thought that this book was so gender progressive that I found it strange. And look, I haven't read this open letter, and I could be completely taking things up incorrectly, but just because it's there, because I'm putting something out publicly, I just don't want anybody to feel that I'm like, yeah, it's fine, people can say whatever they want in terms of that and I'll support that. Like, I don't. Is that fair enough? Okay, let me spin the wheel so I can find out what I'm reading next, because I haven't read anything all week because I was waiting to do this. So okay, every time I go to spin the wheel, I have to like look up again how to interact with it in the video maker that I'm doing. Let's spin the wheel. Okay, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? I need to take the old book off as well. What's it gonna be? Okay, all about love. I'm going to find that. It's not popping into my head straight away, so bear with me. I remembered what it was. All About Love by Bell Hooks. So, I'm going to read the back. I don't know a lot about this, only I've seen them appearing online and kind of in podcasts and things. I'm looking forward. This is the first time I've interacted with Bell Hooks, and I'm looking forward to delving into what they have to say. So this is the back of the book. The word love is most often defined as a noun, yet we would all love better if we used it as a verb, writes Bell Hooks as she comes out fighting and on fire in All About Love. Here, at her most provocative and intensely personal, the renowned scholar, cultural critic and feminist skewers our view of love as romance. In its place, she offers a proactive new ethic for a people and a society bereft with lovelessness. Yes, fantastic. I think that ties in nicely to Woman on the Edge of Time. This is like a nice little progression. So it continues. As Bell Hooks uses her incisive mind and razor-sharp pen to explore the question, what is love, her answers strike at both the mind and heart. In 13 concise chapters, Hooks examines her own search for emotional connection and society's failure to provide a model for learning to love. Raising the cultural paradigm that is the ideal love is infused with sex and desire. I might have said that wrong. Raising the cultural paradigm that the ideal love is infused with sex and desire, she provides a new path to love that is sacred, redemptive, and healing for individuals and for a nation. The Utne Reader declares Bell Hooks one of the 100 visionaries who can change your life. All About Love is a powerful affirmation of just how profoundly she can. So, time to learn all about love. Also, hidden in here from when I bought it are these little Spanish language comic book strips. Very cute. So we're using them as a bookmark. Anyway, there you go. That was a lot. I hope it was easy listening. And thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.